Okay, thank you very much, friends, for coming. And I'm thrilled actually to see so many dear colleagues and friends in the audience. And of course, you know, for the presentation of this very crucial volume, I think, for Catholic education in general. I am Ines Murzaku. I am a professor of religion and also the director and founder of Catholic Studies program at Seton University. I'm also very involved with IFCU, International Federation of Catholic Universities, with my colleague here, Loic Rocher, who really keeps us on track with everything that we do with IFCU, with the Catholic Studies group of IFCU. I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to have all of you here. I'm talking from the United States. It's morning here, and starting the day with all of you, it makes me, you know, feel better for the very complicated day that I have ahead of me. So again, this volume is, I had a chance to look at the volume and also to read a good part of the volume. And I think that it's crucially important for the Catholic education, what we are going through during this time. It's a very beautiful coincidence also that in the United States, for you people that are from the United States, we are celebrating the National Catholic School Week. And when I was talking to Leonardo, I said, oh, it couldn't have been better, right? And this the National Catholic School Week is from January the 29th to February the 4th. And also another big event, and why this book is so timely. Of course, we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of Vatican II, and I always turn back, you know, to that Declaration on Christian Education, and there is so much elaborated in this book that is kind of, you know, talked about in the Declaration on Christian Education. And what the key word actually that the Vatican II talked about the Catholic education was that formation of teachers. And this book focuses on that formation of teachers, and not as a 4 years rather training. It's not a training, it is a formation. So that I was very impressed, you know, how the book elaborates that. And also another takeaway message that I have from the book is that this Catholic teachers formation, it should be embedded in the Catholic universities. I know my university, we have a department of education, but I'm not sure how much are we doing in the formation of teachers. So it would be crucial, this book actually, for you know, us educators in Catholic institutions. Now I would like to invite one of the co-editors of the volume, my dear colleague and friend, Professor Leonardo Franchi, who is the editor also of the volume and also of the series, this beautiful series that he has put together. And Leonardo is going to focus on why a book on Catholic teacher formation. Leonardo.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you for the very kind introduction, and thank you for coming along here at the beginning of your interesting day in the Catholic School Week, and we have our own version of that in Scotland too. My co-editor, Richard Rymarz, I don't think will be here because he is in Australia, where it is quite late in the night, so he sends his apologies. Now, the title of the book, Formation of Teachers for Catholic Schools, Challenges and Opportunities in a New Era, asks the question for us also, why a book, another book on Catholic teacher formation? And thinking through what we're doing here, this volume builds on some previous work that Richard and I have done in the field. The first of these was an article in International Studies in Catholic Education, the journal. In 2017, we had an article called The Education of Teachers for Catholic Schools, Responding to Changed Cultural Contexts. So in that article there, maybe we can find the seeds of the current work. But before this book came out, we had a monograph called Catholic Teacher Preparation, Historical and Contemporary Perspectives for Preparing for Mission. This was published by Emerald as part of a series on teacher preparation globally. We're happy to be part of this series. But this edited volume, which Ines says is the first of a new series from Springer, seeks to bring in a range of different perspectives from around the theme of challenges and opportunities in what's called the new era. We'll elaborate that later. It's good to see some of the contributors here. We see Father John Paul Sheridan, Venerable Sweetman from Ireland, and Father Stephen Reilly and Roisin Coll and Max Crichton will be here to speak with us later on. And to all of you, very, very welcome. Now, these changes certainly have an impact on teachers in Catholic schools. Teacher formation processes, both pre-service and as professional learning, need to be aware of this reality and seek ways in which it can be addressed. Such is the landscape in which we work. In the book, we offer first a set of windows into teacher formation processes in Scotland, USA, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, England, Wales, and Australia. Part 2 opens up for discussion some current big issues: leadership, teacher vocation and agency, teacher formation in truth and beauty, the digital age, spirituality and dialogue. And the epilogue by Quentin Woden presents data on issues in the global south. So we can say, like a supermarket, there is something for everyone here. So the tensions, if we can use that term, between the expectations on teachers to identify and align with the goals and aspirations of the school and the wider cultural changes that make this association more problematic, highlights the need for ongoing discussion on teacher formation. One of the key texts, I think, from Pope Francis is an address he gave to the Congregation for Catholic Education in 2014. It's worth seeking out. But the particular lines or two which really struck me are as follows, and I quote, "Youth are in need of quality teaching, along with values that are not only articulated, but witnessed to. Consistency is an indispensable factor in the education of young people. Consistency. We cannot grow and we cannot educate without consistency. Consistency and witness. For this, an educator is himself in need of permanent formation." End of quote. And when you read the actual quote in the original text, I think the last line or two has got 3 exclamation marks just to get the point over. Now, a key question that arises in the context of Catholic education is, what is the best way to understand teacher formation, or to use the Pope's term, permanent formation, and how is it best carried out? We also need to bear in mind that what's called the chain of memory, which connects each generation to previous generations in matters of religious faith, seem to have become weaker. Common bonds of knowledge and morality seem to have atrophied, leading to fractures in the life of the Church and wider society. In a now famous letter to the Diocese of Rome in 2008, Pope Benedict had this to say, quote, "One speaks moreover of the generation gap. That certainly exists and is a burden, but is the effect rather than the cause of the lack of transmission of certainties and values." So his letter to the Diocese of Rome, 2008, again, the text is there online. There's a lot in there. Now, Pope Francis, in agreeing with the broad description of the educational challenges diagnosed by Pope Benedict, has sought to sketch out a suitable global response. His thinking has emerged in the Global Compact on Education, presented in 2020. Instead of a direct focus on the so-called catechetical outcomes of Catholic education, to use that term, understood as the explicit commitment to foster the Catholic faith of young people in schools, the Compact directs its focus on 7 big issues for contemporary society. And these are as follows. 1, to make the human person the centre of every educational programme. 2, to listen to the voices of children and young people. 3, to encourage the full participation of girls and young women in education. 4, to see in the family the first and essential place of education. 5, to educate and be educated on the need for acceptance and, in particular, openness to the most vulnerable and marginalised. 6, to be committed to finding new ways of understanding the economy, politics, growth and progress that can truly stand at the service of the human person and the entire human family within the context of an integral ecology. And finally, 7, to safeguard and cultivate our common home. Overall, it's asking the Catholic school to make the realisation of these objectives a priority in its planning and mission. The Compact will play a key role in Catholic education in the years to come. How we respond is clearly of significance. How it will evolve, however, is still unclear. In the book, Richard and I, in the postscript and in the beginnings as well, try to offer some ideas on how this could be done. While using what seems to be secular terminology, the Global Compact is driven by Christian humanism. In the video message to mark its launch, Pope Francis could not be clearer about the inspiration and source. And again, this is a quote. In this, our point of reference should be the social doctrine that, inspired by the revealed word of God and Christian humanism, provides a solid basis and a vital resource for discerning the paths to follow in the present emergency. End of quote. Again, a lot packed into that. Now, the attachment to Christian humanism is perhaps an example of the generation gap identified by Pope Benedict. It is not unreasonable to ask to what extent are the nuances of this term intelligible to the current generation of Catholic educators and those responsible for formation or policy formation in Catholic schools. And also, is the use of apparently secular language in the aims of the Global Compact a helpful bridge between the Catholic and secular visions of education, or is it a sign of an accommodation too far? Responding to such questions allows us to reclaim the tenets of Christian humanism for the present age, although it is the term itself, not just its intellectual and pastoral principles, which underpin Catholic social thought. To be clear, Christian humanism seems to be the key which unlocks the potential for contemporary Catholic higher education to speak to multiple audiences. So a renewed Christian humanism will ideally integrate learning, imagination and the virtues with a compassionate, humble yet confident spirituality, nurtured by the Church and in dialogue with all people of goodwill. It will be illumined by Scripture and tell a story about humanity's place in the universe. Essentially, Christian humanism is a way to unite the transcendental claims of Christianity with human flourishing. The incarnationists for Christians assign that religious belief is much more than a form of esoteric, unworldly spirituality, but has definite claims on how we act and live in the middle of the world. What happens to the body and material things matters. As Catholic teacher formation is or should be embedded in Catholic universities or similar institutions, it follows that some alignment between Christian humanism and Catholic higher education is a necessary goal. So the linking of incarnation, Christian anthropology, faith and reason and universities is one response to the challenges of the new era as it affects all institutions of Catholic education, not just the higher education networks. And we can begin to discern therein the seeds of a renewal of Catholic teacher formation. With the Global Compact setting the context for a fresh agenda for Catholic education, our task now is to integrate these principles into the wider processes of Catholic teacher formation. In so doing, we will be forming, hopefully, a core of teachers who are rooted in tradition, but with the necessary acumen to shape their mission in a way suitable to their local situation. Our attention now turns to practicalities. How can Christian humanism inform, support and shape and ultimately reform Catholic teacher formation? There are two steps here, the setting out of general principles and the creating of local spaces or fora where such ideas can be discussed and concretised. To reiterate, the overarching principle is that Catholic teacher formation must be rooted in the Catholic university or associated body. It offers a space for a dialogue between the Catholic intellectual tradition and the teaching profession in schools. Given this context, programmes of study can, within some flexible parameters, explore the wider definitions of humanism as a term in intellectual history, and thereby show how it can be applied, and indeed is essential to the Catholic educational vision. The Catholic University is a space, therefore, where knowledge and understanding and wisdom are sought collegially. A key local arrangement, therefore, must be the setting up of various channels of communication between the university, the Catholic University and Catholic schools. How this works will vary depending on a number of factors, not least the geography of particular jurisdictions. The pandemic-induced discovery of the opportunities offered by forms of remote learning might offer new possibilities for cross-border initiatives in higher degrees and professional development. Furthermore, the development of good working relationships with professional educational associations and NGO-type bodies is an opportunity to present the tenets of Christian humanism not as a solution for the Catholic educational sector only, but as a meaningful and heartfelt contribution to wider debates on educational ideas and values. In so doing, the Catholic community is offering as partners in dialogue, its voices as partners in dialogue, with a view to building school communities which offer the opportunity of human flourishing to all. To conclude, readers of the book will benefit from exposure to concise explanations of the nature of Catholic teacher formation processes. The thematic essays offer a platform for recognised scholars, some of whom are here, to engage critically with themes which are having, and we hope will continue to have, a profound impact on how teacher formation in general and Catholic teacher formation in particular can be shaped in the new era, which is highlighted in the title of the book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, for this splendid presentation. And also it's always good, to hear from the source. So you are the, one of the editors of this volume. So, and super specialist in the field. So thank you very much, for all your comments and also the heads up on this project. Now I would like to invite Natalie Finnigan from the Archdiocese of Glasgow in Scotland. And Natalie is going to focus on a religious education advisor gives a perspective on the importance of teacher formation. Natalie.
Thanks to Leonard for inviting me to share a few thoughts with you about the importance of formation for teachers in Catholic schools. In the new era that Leonard has just spoken about and that's referred to and refined in the introduction to this new book, we hear of the cultural complexities and fragility really of foundations encountered by so many in modernity, and by extension so many of our teachers in the present too. Coined by Pope Francis, the term New Era refers to a place where the mere existence, let alone the legitimacy of religion, is constantly questioned, or worse, is treated with suspicion. It's a landscape that makes affiliations and assumptions about affiliations very difficult to make. As pointed out by the editors, it's also a landscape where people are increasingly disconnected with their memories and shared heritage, especially with regards to faith communities. And here we come to the nub of this collection of essays, the relationship between religious belief and affiliation, and the wider culture in which this commitment is lived out. I did wonder, given the scope of geographical perspectives in this book, as well as attention to current topics that are covered, what else I could possibly contribute to this already extensive discussion. I settled on humbly offering some reflections on the importance of teacher formation based on my own professional experience. For the past 8 years, I've been the religious education advisor for 2 dioceses in the west of Scotland, a job which centres on engagement with hundreds of teachers in Catholic schools. This includes those of the Catholic faith and those who are not of our faith, but who have nevertheless committed formally to upholding the characteristics of a Charter for Catholic Schools in Scotland. All of this means that I see a huge variety of teachers at various points in their careers over any given school year. It would be impossible to articulate every encounter with teachers in Catholic schools and what it communicates about specific challenges and opportunities within this area. But I'd like to highlight a few examples because each of them represents a particular formational need. Each is unique in its own way, but all are of fundamental importance. For some teachers, the fact that they teach in a Catholic school is more or less inconsequential. Teaching is teaching, regardless of the context of the school. Formation in the vision of Catholic education is desperately needed here, an exploration of what is unique about the Catholic school, and by extension, what's unique about their role in this endeavour. St. John Paul II describes it much better than I am able to. He says that no Catholic school can be effective without dedicated Catholic teachers convinced of the great ideal of Catholic education. And that word convinced can also be understood as a motivation for those involved in ITE and in fact all manner of professional development activities. If teachers, like the ones described above, need to be convinced, then someone needs to convince them. Why is this? Well, because the educational mission of the school depends entirely upon them as an individual and also on their kind of shared understanding and commitment to this vision. Without this perspective, the achievement of that vision is left to a sort of hopeful optimism in the effective formation and continued personal dedication of each member of staff, a variable that's extremely difficult to quantify. It's the role of formators then to convince every teacher of the unique and life-affirming vision of Catholic education and their specific role within that. Other teachers that I encounter harbour a very thinly veiled embarrassment that they work in Catholic schools, or even disdain for the Church in general. This can and does express itself in a number of challenging ways, and it would be fair to say that this group is very difficult to reach in my role. I'm convinced, though, that the particular formational approach most fruitful in situations such as these needs to go gently and needs to be rooted in a commitment to rebuilding a damaged or sometimes destroyed relationship with the Church. Oftentimes, apologetics works well here, engaging the head, whilst of course being absolutely mindful of the injured heart that you're dealing with, appealing to the reasonableness of our faith and of our relationship with God as his children. The first reading from the letter to the Hebrews from yesterday's Mass illustrates this point well. It reads, "Have you forgotten that encouraging text in which you are addressed as sons? My son, when the Lord corrects you, do not treat it lightly, but do not get discouraged when he reprimands you. God is treating you as his sons. Has there ever been any son whose father did not train him? Of course, any punishment is most painful at the time and far from pleasant, but later, on those on whom it has been used, it bears fruit in peace and goodness. So hold up your limp arms and steady your trembling knees and smooth out the path you tread. Then the injured limb will not be wrenched, it will grow strong again. Always be wanting peace with all people and the holiness without which no one can ever see the Lord. Be careful that no one is deprived of the grace of God and that no root of bitterness should begin to grow and make trouble. This can poison a whole community." Granted, as an RE advisor, I clearly do not punish the teachers that I work with, but as a parent to an unruly and very loud 13-year-old, I immediately see and appreciate the wisdom in this scripture for me as a parent, but also for our teachers as in a relationship of child and father. They are in a relationship with God, and that hurt and suffering that's part and parcel of being a human being does not diminish this relationship. Rather, we need to equip individuals to see the trials of this life always in light of that relationship to God as his children. We are not God. We don't know everything we need to know, and we need to be continually trained, or formed rather, to live ever more fully in his image and likeness. We need to do this because we're told that it bears peace and goodness and ultimately avoids the poison that can destroy an entire community, or in our specific circumstances, a school. Some teachers that I encounter readily use words such as vocation to speak of their own role in the school, their responsibility for the Catholic ethos of their particular community, and ultimate participation in the educational mission of the Church. Granted, teachers in this group are uncommon, but they speak to a particular type of formation, one that's well established. It's one that oftentimes has resulted from a convergence of a strong personal faith with an equally strong degree or ITE programme, which is secure in its own distinct Catholic identity. From this, they've become convinced of the direction given to them in Christa Fidelis Laici, where it's stated that the laity are given this special vocation to make the Church present and fruitful in those places and circumstances where it is only through them that she can become the salt of the earth. Thus, every layperson, through those gifts given to him, is at once the witness and the living instrument of the mission of the Church itself. The call then to make the Church not only present, but fruitful in every context is taken up wholeheartedly by these teachers, by their presence in that unique place of human formation that is the school, they realise and live out their ability to being living instruments of the Church's mission to those young people in their care. The formation needed here is differentiated, more challenging. It seeks to affirm and to continually encourage growth in their particular vocation as Catholic educator. Others, it seems to me, have been formed in the faith by a sort of osmosis, and as such communicate a knowledge of physical behaviours expected of them without necessarily being able to articulate everything about the faith. There's a sincerity, a trust and an openness in this kind of encounter. This group reminds me a little bit about how I was taught English at school, not in the structured technical way that my parents had been taught, but rather by reading, reading and more reading, learning what was correct through seeing what was correct, but without being able to explain why it was so. These teachers witness to the faith through their actions, which in and of itself is very powerful. With these strong foundations laid, it's then fruitful to put words and reasons to these actions, to solidify them. I suppose the point I'd like to make through exploring these examples, their challenges and their opportunities, is that formation is always of fundamental importance in the life of any teacher, and I include myself in here. Of course, we must be cognizant of the reality that the self develops by interacting with the environment, and of the negotiation with wider culture spoken of by the editors in the introduction, that really is the reality of each person's understanding of their own identity. Formation does not happen in a void after all, and has to fight for its place alongside some very loud competitors. But how a formational opportunity presents itself, and what's required for this encounter to be fruitful, is far from a one-size-fits-all approach. But I often think that this is the beauty of Catholicism, that there is literally something for everyone, an approach that can reach each person. All of it formation, all of it working towards the same goal, but at the same time tailored and personalised. St. John Paul the Great tells us that Catholic education is above all a question of communicating Christ, of helping to form Christ in the life of others. And essentially this is what formation is all about, especially in my role, helping to form Christ in the lives of others so that they in turn can help to form Christ in the lives of their pupils.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for this beautiful presentation and profound thinking. Actually, you kind of summarized, the importance of Catholic education as communicating Christ, how to communicate Christ. And sometimes, we think of religious studies teachers that are in the Catholic schools. Yes, they take courses in theology, etc. However, what about science teachers? Right? There is a communication of Christ even for this, for the science teacher, and we can go on and on. And that's a problem, that we have in the university, and with these students that we are training to be teachers, because formation it's another dimension. And also there are many schools, at least in New Jersey, in my archdiocese, that are Catholic schools that are closing, especially after the COVID. So how can we as Catholic institutions can help this Catholic schools, survive? So there is a plethora of issues here that are related one to another. So thank you again for that beautiful presentation. And now I'll invite Stephen Reilly and Roisin Coll from the University of Glasgow. They are going to focus on Catholic teacher formation in Scotland.
I'm from Scotland again. I'm Roisin Coll, and with my colleague Father Stephen, we'll present for the next 10 minutes on our chapter in this book, Catholic Teacher Education in Scotland. So lovely to see so many familiar faces here today, and delighted to be part of this. Catholic teacher education in Scotland continues to be of interest to those engaged in academic discourse on the nature and value of Catholic education, owing to its locus and contribution to an internationally recognised and acclaimed national education system. And it is worth acknowledging the significance of the wider educational context in Scotland. Sorry, just moving this slide along. Beg your pardon. Thank you. It's acknowledging the wider educational context in Scotland, given it is one of the only countries in the world where denominational education is fully supported and funded by the state. And this rare characteristic differentiates Catholic education in Scotland from other countries for a range of reasons, including the wide variety of social backgrounds of the community that Catholic schools in Scotland and those working in them serve. And this distinctiveness has attracted the attention of academic scholars from within the field of Catholic education and beyond. And teacher education, of course, is regularly in the spotlight when discussing or assessing the achievements of education systems. In Scotland, all student teachers are subject to academically rigorous undergraduate or postgraduate initial teacher education programmes, and Catholic teacher education is located within some of these. Given Catholic schools in Scotland educate nearly a quarter of the country's school children, Catholic teacher education's relationship with initial teacher education in Scotland is of national interest, and therefore worthy of continued reflection, discussion and review. So we were delighted to be invited to write our chapter, which provides a welcome opportunity for doing just that. I want to mention something about history, the history of Catholic education in Scotland. One of the most significant developments in the history of Scottish education was the establishment of the universities of St Andrews, Glasgow, Aberdeen in the 15th century, all of which were founded as ecclesial institutions and given university status by a series of papal bulls. But it wasn't until the 19th century that the discipline of Catholic teacher education came into focus because of a pressing need. The Irish famines resulted in an influx of Catholics to Scotland, almost doubling the Catholic population, but there was a notable shortage of qualified Catholic teachers for these Catholic children. In 1872, there was an act, the Education Scotland Act, which established a national education system in the country, but the Catholic Church withheld transfer of its schools for another 46 years in order to protect denominational status of these schools. A few years later, in 1895, the arrival of the Sisters of Notre in Glasgow and the establishment of a teacher training college began to address the shortfall of appropriately qualified teachers. And they had a vision of education with a distinctive Catholic identity, but one that also engaged with the world, welcomed and debated secular knowledge, and embraced both tradition and modernity. It is evident that academic rigour and excellence were key features of an emerging vision of Catholic teacher education for this country, a vision that remains today. So 46 years on from that 1872 Act in 1918, the Church accepted a very different invitation, one that invited schools to transfer to a national system, but to keep the distinctive faith character of the school. It also remained in control of the religious education system and the selection of appropriately trained and formed teachers. So that was great, especially when the state was assuming responsibility for all financial concerns, including the payment and employment of staff. And this new partnership between church and state was to play out not only in relation to what happened in schools, but then what happened in Catholic teacher education establishments that were or would be in the future producing teachers for these schools. And after we already had the Notre Teacher Training College, there was also very shortly after that the establishment of a second Catholic Teacher Training College in Edinburgh. So a quick whistle-stop tour of the history, and I'm now going to hand over to Father Stephen to continue from this point on. Father Stephen.
you, Roisin. So fast forwarding to the year 2000, the current School of Education in which Roisin and myself and Leonard work is the result of a merger between the Catholic Teacher Training Colleges already mentioned and the University of Glasgow. And this resulted in the University of Glasgow being the sole provider of Catholic teachers for Catholic schools in Scotland. And as part of this unique mission, in 2010, the School of Education established the St Andrews Foundation for Catholic Teacher Education to oversee the formation of Catholic initial teacher education students, to stimulate research and scholarship, foster ongoing formation and leadership among Catholic teachers, and act as a guardian of Catholic educational heritage. Now, the establishment of the foundation in 2010 was timely, showing a clear-eyed recognition of the difficulties in maintaining a distinct Catholic identity in the School of Education over a number of decades in the midst of a large secular university. Thus, Gerald Grace would call the foundation's work the maintenance of mission integrity and the avoidance of mission drift. To fulfil its sole provider mandate, the School of Education offers and awards the Catholic Teacher Certificate in Religious Education, which qualifies graduates to teach RE in Catholic schools. And the pathways to this Catholic Teacher Certificate, henceforth CTC, are largely integrated into the ITE programmes of study. And the past few years have also seen the growth of a multiplicity of extra routes into gaining the CTC, which is now also offered postgraduate students at the Universities of Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Strathclyde, Dundee and the University of the West of Scotland, with University of Glasgow staff travelling to those universities' campuses to teach the courses, which I think is quite unique. The CTC is also offered to qualified teachers via the Setting Out on the Road course, as well as via the long-standing and highly regarded online route, which is called Creedle. These developments have caused the annual number of CTC awards to multiply threefold, increasing the number of suitably qualified Catholic teachers. However, at the same time, they have raised inevitable questions around the University of Glasgow admissions policy and the seeming inability of Catholic students to study on our programmes, questions which are often aired to the university by both the Bishops' Conference and Catholic schools. So our particularly today is about challenges and opportunities. So having given that a brief overview of the history of the merger, the development of the St Andrews Foundation and the ITE provision for Catholic students, this throws into relief many of the challenges and opportunities. So between us, we will name some of them. The first is, we might entitle, in but not of the secular university. As noted, the establishment of the St Andrews Foundation serves to recognise the tensions inherent in being in but not of the secular university. Nonetheless, it also provided a structure around which the Catholic intellectual and pastoral presence could coalesce. In order to fulfil its mission to the students, a key challenge for the Foundation is the articulation and dissemination of a vision of Catholic educational philosophy. And we feel that in doing so, as members of university staff and passionate advocates of Catholic education, we'll be able to serve the Catholic educational community in Scotland and abroad by articulating its spiritual and theoretical foundations. And one example recently of this is our submission from the Foundation to the Scottish Government's national discussion on education, in which we sought to articulate the philosophical roots of education from within the Catholic educational tradition. So this will be of value both to the university and also to the wider Catholic community. In a particular way, the vision of Catholic educational philosophy, which we seek to promote, will also be of service to our Catholic ITE students. The majority of them are no longer Catholic, decreasing from around 95% Catholic in the 2000s to around 40% today. And although this minority status might seem to be a disadvantage, therein lies a fruitful opportunity, one which reflects thinking within the Congregation for Catholic Education. Their 2013 document calls for dialogue to be a hallmark of Catholic education, and wisely notes that in dialogue we become more aware of our own beliefs, as they have to be articulated rather than presumed. And so it's incumbent on us in the Foundation, but also Catholic schools, the wider Catholic community, to foster a vision, a language and a vocational awareness that will allow Catholic ITE students to dialogue and grow alongside their non-denominational colleagues while also equipping them for the challenges of Catholic teaching. Back to you, Roisin. You need to unmute yourself, Roisin.
Beg your pardon. Just conscious of time, but there are a couple of other opportunities and challenges we wish to highlight. One of them, which I'm sure is shared globally, is maintaining a critical mass of teachers, of Catholic teachers, particularly for this country. And given the high expectations of this university, one of the world's top universities, with a high tariff and the expectation of the church for these individuals to be practicing Catholics, this can sometimes reduce the pool of those that are applying to come and become Catholic teachers. And in addition, there are other competing career choices with similar high tariffs. A's in your exams in Scotland can get you into professions like law and medicine. So trying to attract people into teaching is something that is indeed a challenge in Catholic teaching too. In addition, what do we mean by faith commitment? The expectation that these individuals are committed to their faith, practicing Catholic. What does that mean? We expect in Scotland testimony from a priest to say that this person, in terms of belief and character, is someone that is able to fulfil the mission of Catholic education. And that expectation, we ask at university for a document, a priest reference. So what we have done is, because we recognise there is a great deal of differing levels of faith commitment, we pause that submission of that priest reference until later on in the course, to give the individuals the opportunity to re-engage with their faith and to absolutely make that commitment to being engaged with their faith in the future as teachers. And another point, which just to as I look at the time here, I know we need to move on, is about building capacity. You know, in Scotland, the legacy of having highly skilled and well-educated teacher educators remains intact. But there is a responsibility for us, the current cohort of Catholic teacher educators, to instill in the new generation of Catholic teachers an appetite for research in this field and a desire to engage in postgraduate studies and international collaborations. So lots of opportunities and challenges. But just to finish, Scotland is in a very strong, even enviable position in terms of its Catholic teacher education provision. However, there are contemporary challenges, and they're presented in our chapter, and these demonstrate the necessity to avoid complacency. We are lucky here. The University of Glasgow has established excellent working relationships with both the Bishops' Conference and the Scottish Government, predominantly through the work of the St Andrews Foundation and the Board of Catholic Education. It will continue to work with these key partners and stakeholders and address operational challenges. And as it grapples with some of these philosophical challenges, an important focus for St Andrews Foundation is to continue to be outward looking, to engage in dialogue in such matters in an international forum such as this, and to listen to and learn from colleagues globally committed to Catholic teacher education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Reilly and Roisin Coll, for this beautiful presentation. And also, I think that yours is a success story because of all this relationship that you have established with the Bishops' Conference of Scotland, the Scottish Government, through St Andrews Foundation for Catholic Teachers Education, something actually that it's sometimes very hard, you know, to achieve this kind of synergies, right? So, and of course, that we need to compare our notes, you know, as Catholic institutions. That is very important. That international aspect that you talked about, because your model is really wonderful to follow. But maybe, you know, it will not apply in New Jersey, where I am in my university, or in other universities. And we as Catholics actually have to bring up, you know, our Catholic genius here and be innovative, you know, with all this various challenges that the Catholic education is faced. So as Natalie said, actually, one model doesn't fit all, right? But this makes us more creative to come up with this program. So thank you very much for that presentation. And now we are in our last presentation, which is from Professor Max Engel from Creighton University in the United States. And he's going to focus on Catholic teacher formation in the United States of America. Max.
Great, thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's good to see some familiar faces and even more faces than I was anticipated seeing. I'm just ducking in between classes, so this is a real treat. I've got 25 undergrads eagerly waiting for me to go. I said, hey, take care of yourselves. I'll be back in like 15 minutes. But this is a unique opportunity, and I think that the text that we're here to elaborate upon is a great resource, certainly for us in the United States, but certainly hopefully for around the world. The chapter that I'm speaking on is Catholic teacher formation in America. And but for some context, like most places, the teacher cohort in Catholic schools is overwhelmingly lay. It's north of 99% today. And those teachers are formed overwhelmingly in public secular institutions. In the United States, teachers need to be certified by each individual state. So there are 50 states, and each state has its own independent criteria, so that the large or small public institutions in the United States always prepare their teachers to meet the criteria for the given state where the teacher or where the institution is located. And then Catholic institutions within those states also align their teacher prep programs to align with the expectations for public education in the United States. So there's a real lack of formation, even at Catholic institutions. There's a small number of Catholic schools, Catholic universities and colleges that include specific formation for teachers who aspire to teach in Catholic schools. Creighton University is one of them. There is the University Consortium for Catholic Education, the UCCE program, which was started out of or initiated by the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, that has grown, has propagated. But currently in Catholic schools, there are roughly 140,000 Catholic school teachers. In 20 years, these UCCE programs who are dedicated to forming Catholic school teachers have produced roughly 8,000 teachers, maybe 400 a year. So the numbers, it just doesn't work. So we have this significant problem that we have teachers going into our schools that are coming out of teacher formation programs, teacher education programs that are at best not geared to Catholic education, and at worst antithetical to much of what we talk about and aspire to in Catholic education in the United States. So that's problem number one. Second, Franchi and Rymarz, I'm sure you're well aware, have talked about the decline of the cultural religious paradigm. We have an increasing number of disaffiliated or disenfranchised or dissatisfied Roman Catholics who may not be the mentors, the master disciples that we want in our schools. And so, how do we handle a preponderance of teachers who, may not know or may think they know, but they're coming from a position of dissatisfaction or disaffiliation? And then secondarily, that relates to the salience of the Catholic faith for a significant population is minimal. Yes, they affiliate with Roman Catholicism. They may or may not attend Mass, but the significance of Catholicism and of the Catholic worldview is relatively insignificant. It's minimal for them. So it's not indicative or it's not constitutive of their character as individuals. So the challenge is that this pool of disaffected, disaffiliated, disenfranchised, dissatisfied, would be a better word, dissatisfied Catholics, or sort of low identity Catholics, is the pool increasingly that our schools are drawing from for their teachers and for their principals, for their school leaders. So we've got this confluence of challenges that we're wrestling with. And it's worth noting sort of the independent nature. I was very envious of hearing of the system in Scotland, sort of how uniform it is and how united it is. In the United States, every state, every diocese, and every school is often operates very much like its own little fiefdom, completely independent of anything other than its own self, which makes for some nimble opportunities, but really makes any significant large-scale operation or cohesion or coordination very much a challenge. It's helpful, though, when we think about how to respond to this challenge about Catholic teacher formation, that there was a success story that started in 2009. It was the National Standards and Benchmarks for Effective Catholic Elementary and Secondary Schools. The acronym is NSBECS. And it's not a magic wand, but it was a process that covered 2 years, that was collaborative, that was transparent, that established, here's criteria for what an outstanding and Catholic school, successful Catholic school is and does. And that, my thinking is that in the argument, the thesis in the chapter is that the template, the process to identify those standards and benchmarks, we could apply to standards and benchmarks for Catholic school teacher formation. Both the process to identify what are the attributes, what are the characteristics that we want in our Catholic school teachers, and what are best practices to induct and form teachers that have these characteristics. And it becomes a resource that schools can use, whether you're in New Jersey, whether you're in Omaha, Nebraska, or whether you're in Southern California, that we can then begin to collaborate. Because right now, even within my city, my context of Omaha, Nebraska, the induction and the orientation in the formation of Catholic school teachers varies based on the school you're in the part of a city, in a part of our city. I mean, there's, in a lot of ways, it's the Wild West, even within my own diocese, even within my own city. So if we get some standards that are approved by the bishops, that are recognized by Catholic scholars, Catholic school advocates, to say, hey, here are standards with individual benchmarks that you teachers, you dioceses, you school leaders can use to identify, hey, are you following best practices to recruit, induct, form, and engage your faculty in ongoing formation to continually form their teachers? Are you doing this? And I think that there's real hope, given in those national standards and benchmarks. They have been, again, it's not a magic wand or a silver bullet for Catholic schools, but they've really got good conversation going across our country in Catholic schools. And so that gives me some hope. The benefits, I think there's consistent expectations. I think when we can say, Catholic schools can begin to anticipate wherever you are, oh, someone's coming to us from a different city, they've been formed, they've met these specific criteria. And it will help consultants who provide ongoing professional development for schools. I think it'll help publishers present materials. Teachers, school leaders that I work with are desperate for materials. Hey, I don't have time. Give me a binder. Give me resources that I can use with my faculty on a consistent basis that I have quick access to. Publishers don't, by and large, create these materials because there's such a wide range of expectations. But if there's a standards for expectations, I think we can interest publishers in creating materials that could help school leaders develop formation induction for their faculties and staffs. Challenges are the two things that Catholic schools or Catholic educators don't have enough of, and it's time and money. The Catholic school leaders that I work with are pushed to the brink. I don't have time to induct. They tell me at Creighton, give me well-formed teachers, and we're not there. We need to work together. We need to partnership. But those challenges, we can't be stymied by those challenges. We need to acknowledge them and I think move them forward. Otherwise, those challenges can stifle any creativity or initiative in Catholic schools. The last thing that's worth mentioning here in the United States is we have an acute teacher shortage. The public schools can't find enough teachers to staff their schools. And, Catholic schools, by and large, don't necessarily compete for those same pool of teachers, but there is some overlap. And, this is something that at state levels, people are asking serious questions about of what can we do to increase the number of teachers in our schools. But that dearth of teachers is certainly impacting our Catholic schools. So that's a little bit, I think, about Catholic school teacher formation in America. I'm happy to have had this opportunity to sort of share a little bit, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Max. This is, I mean, I hear you. We have the same problems, you know, at Seton Hall University. And of course, you know, the formation of teachers have to abide by the rules of the state of New Jersey. So, and then they have also to have a major. And for the major that they, you know, that they choose is our other science or history, you know, one of the majors that is approved by the state of New Jersey. So making those partnerships that the University of, you know, Glasgow have made, it's crucial, actually, if we want to go forward. And also, you know, standards. What are the assessment tools, for example, that we have? So for the teachers, at least the students that I have that take a few Catholic studies courses, you know, that fit their schedule, by the way, because they have a major and they have, you know, the requirements from the state of New Jersey. It's just, you know, it's a huge stretch for these students to take any course in theology or the Catholic intellectual tradition. So we need to do something. And this has to come, you know, from us, the practitioners, people that are in the trenches. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. We learned so much from each other and our experiences.